Okay, we're just kind of getting back with this episode. It's a little somber. It's about what Justin and I have been experiencing now, like being 3 years into a relationship and like
5 months into living together.
And 5 months into living together, about, you know, some of the more difficult things being faced with yourself, but in relationship. We explore some of that and some of our personal struggles. And it's good to be back.
More specifically, we'll talk about ADHD, hormonal acne, and movie 1 and movie 2. Welcome to If I May Be So Bold, a podcast about relationships.
The ones we have with others, the one we have with ourselves.
And given that Dan and I are a couple, you're going to be hearing about our relationship too.
I'm Dan Epstein, a recording artist, former opera singer, and relational coach.
I'm Justin Waring Crane, a therapist, recovering perfectionist, and karaoke star. I think it started feeling really bad when we sat down to work on the podcast yesterday. And I don't know. Yeah, I just felt so hopeless, so discouraged, so overwhelmed. In fact, I was just a little hungover. And I knew that, but I still was just like,
you didn't mention that to me.
I know I didn't want to because I didn't want you to judge me.
For drinking?
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's less sympathy if it's like, oh, you're hungover and like you did that to yourself. Like, I don't think you would judge me necessarily, but I just...
You didn't want the conversation to be about your hangover?
Yeah, no, I didn't want that. And I also like, on some level, like, I don't know if it was gonna maybe undermine my feelings or like maybe diminish, like, oh, like you're
I
just
didn't really
going through
get.
something.
Okay, so this is a conversation we had where you were basically expressing that it was feeling not joyful to you to like do the prep and sort of due diligence work to make the podcast happen.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to engage with it. You know,
you didn't want to engage with my meltdown.
Well, I felt my instinct was to like feel like I had to tell you why we should keep working.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be in that position.
Yeah, and I didn't actually want to hear that.
Yeah.
So neither of us wanted that.
What did you want, do you think?
I think just like, I mean, I wanted comfort from you, but I also think I just really needed comfort from myself, and I needed to like go and like, you know, cry and just like be alone. And what I ultimately ended up doing was like going and doing yoga in my room. But I just like, the feeling was like so big, you know?
Yeah, I could tell.
I just couldn't like see past it. I just like couldn't do anything. So,
and then how did the feelings play out through the rest of the day?
Well, it was funny because I had my individual therapy scheduled for later that day, mm-hmm. and my group therapy. Mm-hmm. So I was just like I was getting all this support. Mm-hmm. So it was cool to be like, yeah, like I have this support lined up, but it was just one of those days where I was like, this is just something that's going to pass, and like, you're going to feel better tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, it's just like,
yeah, all consuming.
It's all consuming. You can't really do anything about it.
Yeah. And we spoke about this thing that I heard Martha Beck say on this online course I took from her, which isn't funny that I did that.
So why are you
It's cool.
laughing?
I think I was trying to be invulnerable.
Oh.
Where she advocated that you want to, when you're starting to feel like really stuck, like basically when your emotions are coming up in a way where it's like, I feel horrible, whatever that looks like. Could be anxiety, it could be despair and hopelessness. That the first step when that happens is to drop any, what she calls, value added activity. So, like, often we might feel like, oh, I feel like shit. Like, okay, I'm going to be really productive, and then I can feel good about myself or something. And she's advocating for the opposite, which is that make the fact that you're feeling some type of way be the most important thing that's happening right now. And honor that that's important by not being productive and by stopping and, like, I guess that would be creating space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like that she says that. And that's so aligned with the training that I've gotten, in my work as a therapist. We do what's called, like regulation based interventions. So regulation comes first. So if you're having a big feeling, nothing else can get done. It's not even a choice of like, oh, I'm going to decide to drop any value added activities. I'm not going to try to pay attention. I'm not going to try to problem solve. I'm not going to try to be productive. It's not even a choice. It's like just the way that that your nervous system is set up. You just can't access these like higher level thinking processes. So I just really felt that in effect yesterday. And even though I have all this training around it, I was having such resistance to like stopping. I didn't want to stop, even though I knew I couldn't continue. I was just like, I don't want to give up. I don't want Dan to see me as like not like cut out for this, or like he's like driving this, because I know you already like feel like that sometimes, with the podcast. So I was just like, I couldn't even put into words what I was feeling, because I was feeling everything, all at once.
Right.
And it was hell.
Yeah. And I think that, the way self-help books and media are positioned, I feel like people get the idea that like you're going to get to a place where whatever comes up, you're going to be like, okay, I know this one. Like, I know what to do. And then, it'll feel like not hard. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I feel like even though I learn and I read and I obsess over spirituality and self-help and emotions, yeah, when the big feeling comes, it's like almost like, you're a baby again. You need someone to be like, give you a bottle and like put you down to bed, which you kind of did. You were sort of like, go like do what you need to do. And I just like really needed you to say that, because I wasn't going to be able to do that for myself. I was like, oh, I should just like keep going and keep trying, even though it's not working. I should keep trying to be productive and just like push through this.
Yeah. You getting emotional just thinking about it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what exactly it was. Like, it was, it's like all these layers of feelings. There's like the first layer, which is like, I feel bad. I feel hungover. I feel depressed. And then there's all the backlash emotions of like, well, I shouldn't have, drank so much last night. And even though like it was super fun and I had a great time with my friend, and, just layers of like guilt and shame. And then being like, okay, well, I need to be responsible. And this is my year of like being responsible and stepping up and like being more resilient. So like, fuck you, be more resilient, you stupid loser, and like, then it's just like layers of that. And then, dealing with trying to understand my ADHD.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways we could pivot from here, I feel.
Yeah, and that's also like the ADHD brain is like something happens and then your mind goes in a million directions trying to, make sense of it, or like, it just sparks all these different
Right.
ideas, and
Right.
then there can be just, I think, a lot of like stuckness and paralysis and confusion of like, I don't know how to make sense of this, and that's the divergent thinking happening.
Yeah, we're both reading this great book called Your Brain's Not Broken by Tamara Rosier.
Strategies for navigating your emotions in life with ADHD.
And when I read, she says that, like, divergent thinking, people with ADHD are known for like leaning in that direction, being more divergent thinkers, which is like basically if you're thinking about a project, it's the first step of like coming up with a lot of ideas, like making a big mess. And then, the convergent thinking is like, okay, let's pick an idea and execute a plan. But, having her name that, I think, was really helpful because my brain does want to go all these different places, and I feel like often when it does do that, I am suffering because I'm like, fuck, like I feel so unfocused or something, even though my brain is like doing something that it does naturally.
Yeah.
So it was good to have like a name for that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like real tension, and it's kind of helping me understand why work is so difficult for me. Like people with ADHD, they try to do divergent and convergent thinking at the same time, or they're in a job where, they, for example, in the book, she talks about this doctor who's like an amazing diagnostician. He can think about all these tests that we should order, and he can narrow in on a diagnosis and help his patients in that way. So that's the divergent thinking helping him. But then when it comes to doing his documentation and doing paperwork and admin stuff, he can't do it. His brain isn't like set up for that. And so I think that creates a tension where we're trying to do both of those things, but it's really difficult and it's very tiring.
Yeah. What do you want to keep talking about the ADHD thing, or do you want to?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm feeling not too.
Yeah, it's just to put it out there that I'm, recently have learned that I have ADHD, and it's such a relief, and it's also a lot of grief happening, just knowing that I've been living with this my whole life and nobody helped me identify it, and I had to be the one saying like what's going on and go looking for answers, and basically like just
that's really common with adult diagnosed ADHD, which I also experienced.
For women especially.
Right.
Yeah.
The first step being like, oh, I have to now grieve and imagine ways in which I could have been helped, and like ways I could have maybe suffered less or achieved more or something younger. And it does change how we talk about stuff in our relationship, just like now that we're thinking about it in terms of like we are two ADHD people, like who both struggle with some of the same stuff.
Well, it is a relief to feel like, oh, I thought of myself as flaky and inconsistent and unreliable and even inconsiderate.
And I remember early in our relationship, you having a lot of angst over certain friendship things where you were really afraid to be thought of as like a fuck up in your friendships or something.
Yeah. So it makes me really sad knowing that I viewed myself that way for so long. Like, what would life be like if what would it have been like if I didn't think something was so wrong with me,
Totally. So I think let's talk about where we are in our arc of like cohabitation.
Okay.
A lot of stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you wanna start?
Well, I guess okay, so just to feel like I'm giving it context. We moved in together. We got COVID.
We moved in together October 2022. It's now March 2023.
And those first couple months were pretty difficult. I was going through a depression and feeling really not affectionate at times and like avoidant of Justin, and starting to experience what for me felt like really challenging, kind of like ugly feelings where I now have this partner who I have this trusting, committed relationship with. We've made this choice to move in together. And it was an experience I hadn't really had before, in that what I was doing was the ways in which I would normally treat myself in a kind of mean way of criticism, judgment, ridicule. I was now feeling myself putting it on Justin because I was in your proximity more, and like, dealing with like the little things of like navigating our days with each other around. And like, I was experiencing that as like impatience and judgment, criticism. And that freaked me out because it was like, oh man, and then what I also think was going on was, we at that point would have been together like 2.5 years. And I could feel that like the initial stage of a relationship of like falling in love and like the chemicals of that romantic love, that we were not in that chapter anymore. And so I think I was also just grieving, like, fuck, like I want to feel that way, which is like something I understand intellectually to be how it tends to go for people. But when it actually happens, of course, it's not like the idea of it.
Yeah. And I think I don't want people to think like, okay, I don't believe that, the honeymoon phase lasts forever. That's not what I think. But I don't want anyone out there to think that you sort of settle into this sort of like complacent and like dead dynamic. That's not really what happens.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It just changes. It's like it really shifts, and then you have to get really creative about nurturing the relationship and how you can, find new ways of bringing excitement and play into the dynamic, which, is something that we've started doing more of. Sexually, but I won't say
you won't
specifics.
Say
I won't say sexually, but it's been no. I mean, of course, sex is a big place where I think about that. The physical attraction. But do you hear what I'm saying? It's like, I don't want people to think that, oh, like you have the honeymoon phase and then you have just like settling into like, this is how it is. And like,
right.
And we're not attracted to each other. It's like, I don't believe that that's.
It makes me think about, which is this genre of TikTok though, of like couples TikTok, which we're becoming pretty steeped in because we're learning how to use TikTok. Of like where the couple, like the genre of TikTok is like we're a couple and like basically like I want to fuck my partner all the time, You
Oh,
know, where it's like
ew.
when my partner like it's like a typical one will be like, oops, when my like when I like it'll be from the if in a straight couple woman's POV, like when I like back up into my husband, basically like when we're on our sides in bed, and then it's like some like sexual like boy, you know, like
That's so funny. I haven't seen those.
which is just like what like that. Yeah, I don't
Oh, the
even know.
messages like we're so sprung for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's okay, so that's definitely a thing that people brag about, right? Like,
Yes.
oh, like, yeah, we just want to like tear each other's clothes off
Yes.
at all times. And that's awesome. I really, if that's really what your relationship is like, that's amazing. Um, and I don't think that being in a committed relationship or being in a long-term relationship means you have to give up passion, romance, excitement, all this stuff. You're going to find it, you're going to actually have to be intentional about how
Right.
you cultivate it. And I don't have anything that's going to change, you know, the longer we're together, things are going to like really change, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like our sexual dynamic has just like it's had so many chapters. I feel like even
Mhm.
in just like under or I guess almost about 3 years.
Yeah.
Like it's like you can kind of block it off into big chunks, but it's more like little chunks actually,
Mhm.
from what I
Mhm.
can recall. Just like
Yeah.
periods of feeling each other out, uh, not physically, like emotionally and like with trust,
Mhm.
basically,
Mhm.
where I was avoidant for certain reasons at first, and then I came into more trust
Mhm.
and was able to not be avoidant and
Mhm.
like be pretty in flow. But then like, you know, there's a new thing that's happening
Mhm.
where now all of a sudden we're like playing with like in a playful way, like saying no to each other, you know,
Yeah.
like in a way that's like in its nature is like about yeah, play.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's been very surprising to me, just like I wouldn't have been able to guess like how things would play out in that way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, do you not want to share that?
No, I think I feel comfortable sharing that. You know, I think I've just in my own like spiritual journey, I've been trying to we'll bleep that part out where I said spiritual journey. Um I've been trying to, you know, I've been working on my relationship to my sexuality and like this relationship feels like a really safe container to do that. And I think what our relationship has is a lot of safety. So what
Mm,
we actually
right.
are often bumping up against is like, okay, if it feels too safe, it's not exciting. If it's too
Yeah.
safe, there's no tension. So how can we cultivate that? And, you know, sexually, we're finding ways to do that. And it's fun, you know, it's,
Yeah. We're also just in general, we're both people pleasers. Um, and it's been interesting because I feel like what the safety and trust does afford is now where I'm someone who hasn't really felt that safe in many relationships, even though I have a lot of close relationships. I'm often worried about um, hurting someone's feelings, not being available. And it feels what's cool about having a relationship like I have with you is now we are like experimenting with what we kind of talk about as like being dicks to each other,
mm-hmm.
which is like feels like a new frontier in a way.
Yeah, it does. I don't really know how that started.
Yeah.
What do we do? Or
It's like
we're
a
kind of,
testing thing.
yeah. What I can't really
Is
think
it a
of
testing thing?
examples. Testing what? Testing
Like,
limit?
well, it's like the game is like testing, what if I do this? And like, how does that play with you? You know?
Yeah.
It feels like that. And it's like we're checking in about it in a way. I wonder if at some point we will just like go past that point.
Yeah. And not need to check in about it, you mean?
Yeah. Well, like the game will become more advanced, I guess.
Yeah.
Is what I'm imagining.
Get to the next level. Yeah. Like, for example, I might say to you, like, shut the fuck up. Like, you're so dumb. Like, and you might start talking and be like, shut up, you know? And then I'll actually then after that immediately be like, is it okay if we joke like that, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's been fun.
Yeah, and I just think it's an interesting question for oneself of like, do I have relationships in which I feel embraced to the point where I am in a state of play? You know, I think that's like an interesting marker of that. Like I'm in a state of play where I don't have to think about like, will I be thrown out of the boat if I step on the oar?
Yeah, I like that. In a state of play. Ooh.
How are we doing with your list?
Yeah, so I made a list of things I want to cover today. We have line dancing, ADHD, hormonal acne,
a potpourri,
lacking karaoke because I haven't done karaoke in a while.
I think you can come up with a better turn of phrase for that one.
Okay, what would you say? Karaoke hiatus, karaoke drought, I think is what we're in right now.
Drought, yeah, I like drought.
Karaoke drought. Okay, so karaoke drought, and then True Detective season 1. What do you want to hear about?
What do I want to hear about?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me check in with myself. I think we should talk about the acne.
Okay. The hormonal acne seems to be trying to come back, which is truly devastating.
Isn't it fun to have something that you're like checking in about your body with every day and feeling a sense of dread, and like it makes you feel like shit every time you look at it?
Yeah, it's amazing. It makes waking up so fun because it's the first thing I think about when I wake up. I dread going to do my routine, so it's like I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. So yeah, it's hard too, because just a little backstory. I am one of those people fortunate enough to, and I never struggled with acne until I guess my late 20s. And that's when, your hormones shift. And so I went through hell. I guess now it's been a couple years, starting in like 2021. Started having acne, just did everything I could, tried everything.
Do you, when you think back on like times where your peers had acne, but you didn't really, like how you related with acne?
Oh,
Does anything come?
I mean, I just kind of felt like, thank goodness I don't have to worry about that, like, and so it's definitely like, it really like fucks with, my confidence. It fucks with my sense of worth and sense of self. And on top of it, I healed it and was not dealing with it anymore. It went away. So for like a year or more, I was like really in the thick of it, and eventually culminated in I got my IUD taken out, and sure enough, that cleared my skin within 3 months, and I know no way to prove that caused it to go away, but that's kind of how I see it. And so from like, let's see, August, September, October, November, December, January, for like 6 months, my skin was like completely clear. Like no acne whatsoever. And I was like, I thank God that that's over, like that was horrible and I never want to go back to that. And so feeling like it's coming back it's like re-traumatizing, because that was just such an awful time. And also like, not to mention so time consuming, so money consuming, like I'm still paying off like money that I spent, in an effort to treat the acne. And so it's really a difficult thing to go through. So
yeah. And you spend a lot of time like trying to care for your skin.
Yeah. And then had this 6-month period of feeling like it's better,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, appearance stuff, like what's my relationship to how I look, and like, I do get a sense of confidence from my looks.
Same.
So it's just like, okay, on a sort of spiritual level, it's like know that I'm supposed to be like, oh yeah, like this is, all immaterial, and like, my essence is like, it's right.
Yeah.
It's like my essence is like beautiful and radiant. And, if I'm completely Buddhist or like not attached, not hinging my sense of worth on appearance, then like I'll be completely free of, this prison. So
right.
It's like, okay, I know that.
Meanwhile, the whole world is telling you how you look is so important.
Yeah. So
yeah, I totally relate. And like, I'm struggling with that in terms of reckoning in therapy with like having been a chubby kid and then having my world turned upside down when I became skinny, and having everybody treat me so much what I felt like was so much more preferably, which was like thinking I was good looking. Not everybody, of course. But it's like, I was like, okay, so this is really fucking important, I guess, because when I felt like I wasn't good looking, I felt like it would make a big difference if I, looked better in the eyes of others. And then when I felt like I did that, it did completely change.
Yeah.
So like how the hell?
Yeah. Then you get the feedback that like, oh no, this is the way that I'm supposed to be. And actually it's made my life so much better, and so much easier. So it's like, it's hard to argue with that,
And then like, of course, yeah, it's a real fucking minefield. Like reading books, like what we don't talk about when we talk about fat and the Fearing the Black Body, like these books that like make you just feel so angry about skinniness as power, or like, beauty as power, quote unquote beauty. It's a real confusing thing to navigate with yourself when you're like, okay, but when I look at myself, I have this instinct, like of, do I like or do I not like, and it is affecting me a lot, and my confidence levels, etc. Yeah, I think I want to just give a little context, I guess, going back to kind of like the honeymoon period thing.
Oh yeah, movie 1 and movie 2.
Yeah, which is something our therapists say, which movie 1 being falling in love, like the first, like. And
wait, I just want to shout out
yeah,
Amana and Krish
of Learning
Love Institute in freaking Sedona, of course, I think. Sedona,
you think?
Arizona. I think they're literally located on Sunshine Lane, which is just like, I don't even know.
Are you doxing them?
Self-explanatory, but doing what?
Doxing them?
What's doxing?
which is, it's like, shit, I don't even know if I know exactly what it means, but it's like an internet term for like basically like sending the Twitter mob onto somebody. It's like giving out their info or being like, go get them.
Go get them, meaning go get your healing. Not, I don't know, that wasn't how I should have said it, but like go and like flock to them because they are so fabulous. But go on, you were talking about.
Oh yeah, so movie 2. We're in movie 2 now, which is what we were kind of talking about before.
Yeah.
And
so did we set that up adequately? There's this,
yeah,
they have this framework, which is, I guess, just, their term for it. Movie 1 being like that blissful honeymoon part of a relationship.
Where, and I've heard that talked about by like F. Scott Peck, is that his name? Who wrote that famous therapy book, The Road Less Traveled, which is like, relationship, romantic, euphoric love is basically a biological thing to make us reproduce and like partner up. And that real love is something that comes after that.
But I also just want to say it's really sweet how I just really like those terms, like movie 1 and movie 2. Like it's so like simple.
Because you would expect there would be some more like spiritual sounding like term for it. It's Hollywood, baby.
I just love that. I love it. But yeah, like our friend Sarah, who we had on the podcast, she'll say, she'll
she
go
will literally say it to you when we play the episode.
Yeah, you'll hear this. But how like when she goes to Amana or Krish, these amazing therapists who are also a couple, she'll be like, oh, I'm so in love with so-and-so and it's amazing. And we connect so well. And it's like, like so next level. And they're like, yeah, it's movie 1.
Yeah. Like talk to us. Yeah. When we were in movie 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird being in movie 2. Like I do feel like there was this initial grief period. And now I'm in this place where I still have, stuff come up where I feel sad. And I miss just like that feeling early on when you're like, God, like I'm with this person. And like when you're going to be social, like, God, isn't it so fucking cool that I'm with this person, like, and like we get to then like go back and spend time alone, like just like everything being new and feeling so blissful. I guess I feel like now, like the things like, for example, the trying out being not people pleasing with each other and like feeling the safety to be, rude to each other, in ways that are, not manipulative.
Yeah, no, ideally. We're not actually talking about being mean to each other. We're talking about being mean in a way that feels like playful and fun.
Right. And like feeling like I think you've changed a lot and then like you will come to me for emotional support more. Like early on in our relationship, you were really reluctant to do it. And I still feel the same way that I did then, which is when you come to me and you like are vulnerable and need support, it makes me feel close to you. That's
funny because I didn't even realize that's how it was. Like because I feel like I needed so much support early on in our relationship going through depression. But yeah, I think I was still very reluctant to go to you for it. And it was scary because we were, still developing that bond, that trust.
And and I look at you, in new ways, because we are like, the relationship is ever changing and going through different waves. And I don't even know how to describe it, but I will say that like it is really important, I think, to cultivate in your relationship talking about what's really fucking going on. Because if I didn't have that, I think I would be pretty miserable.
Yeah.
If everything in our relationship were the same, which is like kind of an impossible exercise, but like these things, like if I was feeling off or like if I'm feeling scared or like scarce about the relationship or
Mhm.
something, and it was like I felt like I needed to just keep that quiet
Mhm.
and just like kind of hope it went away or something.
Mhm.
I don't know how I would deal with that.
No, yeah. No, yeah, you can't.
So even if you're in a
yeah.
relationship and you've been in a relationship where you don't really talk about this kind of stuff, like do baby steps.
Mm.
Like try it with something small.
Mhm.
Like I don't like this
Mhm.
food, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
like just talking about something that's going on, seeing where it leads.
Mhm.
Cause it's like a major lifeline.
Yeah. I just remembered like within the last few months, you know, as we were settling into living together and I was experiencing really a lot of like contentment and just feeling like, yeah, like this is my new home and I feel really happy here. And, you know, I'm spending time with Rick and, you know, it's like have the dog and like, you know, have this new dog in my life, even though I knew him before, but it's just like, you know, I'm living with him and he's like curling up on my bed and, you know, I have my room and I'm decorating that and yeah, feeling that sort of like nesting contentment. Um, I was really feeling like all my needs are kind of being met, like all my material and emotional needs are being met without, you know, much like going out into the outside world. Like I was, you know, going to work and still going to social things, but it's sort of, um, I don't know, very gradually slipped into this thing where I had this realization maybe on drugs, where I was like, "Oh my god, I feel like Dan is kind of my best friend right now." And I was like, "Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh." And because, you know, as we talk about, like, that's not what we want our relationship to be. Like, I mean, I do value, you know, the friendship and the companionship that we have, but I think, you know, I don't want I don't want you to be my best
Yeah,
friend.
you
It's
said
just,
it to me too.
and I said it to you. I was like, I feel like you're kind of my bestie right now. And I didn't like that. I was then sort of like rocked by that realization. And also I was like, okay, but I kind of know how that happened. And just felt like it's so just automatically happened where like all my needs are kind of being met. So why would I, you know, go outside of this? But I think the answer is, of course, because, like, you know, if in my other friendships, my other relationships, especially female friendships, there's so much richness and humor, you know, that I don't get from you, and I'm not supposed to get it from you, you know. It's just a different connection. So,
Well, I don't totally track what you're
um,
saying.
well, like there's anytime I'm with, you know, a really good female friend, I'm reminded like, oh, like this is a different thing. Like, yeah, maybe Dan and I like laugh together and have a great time and can have deep conversations and really connect, but there's this different flavor, you know, with a really good friend and like, you know, gossiping and giggling and just like girl time.
Yeah.
That when I don't have it, I can be like, oh yeah, I'm fine without it. But then I experience it again and I'm like, oh my God, like I can't go without this, you know? So I've been trying to reincorporate that um, and also I'm in a time where I don't have a ton of friends that I feel super close to. And you know, I have certain friends where I'm like, okay, I really want to nurture this relationship and I'm investing in it. But I think in my 20s, I was like, had so many friends and I was like, you know, doing something social every night of the week. And that was really fun. But, you know, I'm kind of wanting to just have a select few people to deepen with. And that's our show. Thanks for joining us. Our music is by Nightlight. We self-produce this podcast, so please subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps.